Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Awakened an Ancient Dragon Part 1. Chapter 1. Shock and horror filled Issei as he watched his fellow devil and friend retire from the raiding game. His anger started growing, then it exploded into unbridled fire. He stood and snarled. "You will pay, Verlum." Issei roared as his sacred gear appeared and started glowing an unnatural blue. "Your sacred gear is unable to continue the bonding. Please name another recipient for the boost gear." A voice rang out. Issei said the first name that came to him. "Asia," accepted, the voice said before the gear vanished as Issei thrust it into the air, hand towards the sky. The gauntlet was replaced with a blue gauntlet that looked like the boosted gear, but without the gem and horns on it. The rest of the armor materialized as Issei roared out, "I will not carry the past or the present. I have watched your world and seen the lie. The time has come and the hour is nigh that I will come unto my own. He that will face me will grasp the light of truth in a bleak world. Requiem has come and I thirst for it." The armor was blue, the eyes on the helmet were crimson red, and the horn on top of his head had 2 points, one behind the other. The tail was long and connected from the middle of the shoulders, swishing back and forth as 2 real dragon wings sprouted from the points that the devil wings connected. The helmet also had a toothed mouth that opened with a jet of steam rushing from it. Issei breathed in and out. The person that ended Kaneko reeled back in surprise. This was not a normal sacred gear at all. Lightning erupted out of the sky and struck the still open palm of his armored hand. Electric sparks warped and snapped its way down his arm as he soaked up the plasma energy before closing his hand and pointing it at Riser Phoenix's queen. "Malignant, Verlum." Issei hissed as his fist opened and the world went white for the queen. The bolt of lightning was a bright blue that burned almost white. The spectators shuddered in fear as they recognized the bolt as pure, unadulterated holy lightning. The queen never stood a chance, and she was quickly taken from the game before any permanent damage could take hold. Riser Phoenix queen has retired. Issei stopped his attack before turning, his instincts running rampant as he took flight and flew towards the center of the arena, towards the king that took his friend away. Asia was shocked when her body was covered with red armor and had wings that looked like they were made out of the same jewels that were on her god-given gear. "Welsh Twilight Dragon. Balance Breaker." A voice rang out before another said boosted gear and Twilight healing combination completed. New name, Twilight Boosted Gear. "Rias. What's going on?" The ex-nun cried out as she felt her body with a red armored and clawed hand. Ria's Gremory was stunned as she looked at Asia before she said, "I don't know, but you have Balance Breaker unlocked as a side effect." She already had Balance Breaker. The integration of 2 sacred gears must have unlocked my Balance Breaker, and now she is using it. Asia jumped as the new male voice said that, before it said quickly, "Don't worry, you're more than safe, my lady. I'm Drag, the Red Welsh Dragon, at your service." They were interrupted when a voice said, "Well, Rias, to think that you had the Welsh Dragon in your peerage was unthinkable, but to have it with a weak servant. Oh, how many devils have turned in their graves because of this." Rias snapped, "My bishop is not weak, Riser." Riser smirked, "Of course not, unless I prove otherwise." He summoned Phoenix Fire to his hand and threw it at Asia, only for a blue blur to intercept it with a roar thrice. The fire vanished as the new figure stood up and snarled, "Pothokikes and Arcanus." Drake choked as he said, "He's speaking Draconic, the language of the dragons." Rias stood frozen to the spot as she asked, "What did he say?" "Stupid fire magic." Drake chuckled before speaking again, "Riser, you're doomed." "What? No one can beat me, arg." Riser was cut short when his face was covered in water, holy water to be exact. "How did you get holy water?" Riser screamed as his face slowly healed. The blue armored figure stepped forward, water was moving around his body like a living serpent, shimmering in the artificial light. It was Issei that spoke, "No one hurts my friends. Not you, not your queen, not even your peerage. I watched Kaneko retire, and I will not have it happen again. Burn in the holy elements, you Nurthray Beshra." The water rushed forward and encased the third son of Lord Phoenix before Issei blasted the sphere with holy lightning, causing the damage to increase tenfold. Riser was pulled from the game, the water splashed to the ground as Issei collapsed, exhausted beyond belief. "So, you are my host. The perverseness is manageable to a degree, but it must go." Issei looked round, trying to find the owner of the voice. "Who are you and where are you?" With a snort, a blue-scaled dragon appeared before Issei and smirked, "I am Requiem, your new partner and dragon companion for your natural devil lifespan. You have many questions and this place has no concept of time, so let's start from the beginning, shall we?" Issei could only stare dumbfounded at the dragon before nodding his head. What had he gotten himself into? Sirzich Lucifer rewatched the footage of his sister's pawn, his mind reeling at how powerful and mind-boggling at what had happened. Moments after his sacred gear had announced that it couldn't continue bonding, the boy had instantly sent it to Asia, the bishop that wielded the sacred gear Twilight Healing before the armor had appeared. The boy had somehow harnessed the power of nature's lightning and changed it to the energy that was pure and holy. Riser's queen was lucky that she had only gotten a few seconds of contact with the holy lightning any longer and she would have been toast, literally. Then Issei had spoken the lost language of dragonkind before he utterly trashed Riser in an instantly fatal combination of holy water and holy lightning. Riser was lucky to be alive at all because of his Phoenix abilities. "Sis, what have you gotten yourself into now?" Surzich murmured, pausing the footage to show the utter hate on Issei's face before he transformed into that blue dragon armored demon. Chapter 2. 3 days in a coma, that's how long it took for all of the hard work that Ria's Gremory's peerage to fall flat. Issei was furious, never mind that his body was still weak from his overpower state in the raiding game, but he was now half dragon. The pure rage could be felt everywhere in Kuo by every devil, fallen angel and angel. He was barely able to understand Grafia when she handed him a magic circle to the wedding. The host of Requiem walked up to the massive oakwood doors, curled his fist and blew the doors off their hinges, splitters and chunks of wood flying everywhere. The smoke slowly cleared, the human-dragon hybrid let his aura flare to ward off any devils from coming closer to him. Issei's coma had mentally prepared him for the side effects of being part dragon. The instincts and mannerisms would take some time to get used to, but he wanted to punch a certain firebird where the sun don't shine first. TCH Riser sneered, not even acknowledging the pawn, and that only added more to the flame that was growing inside his heart. Ice Asia said quietly, Drake was out as a pair of fingerless gloves that had a green jewel on the top. Drake knew that no one would be able to stop Issei Haidu in any way, not even the power of destruction could because of his change. Riser was dead, no question about it, a dragon's pride was on the line and was being constantly insulted by the third son of the House of Phoenix. The Issei growled, a sickening sound that carried across the entire room, "Are dead, Riser." Riser sniffed, letting his power flare out. That was a mistake, as it was crushed under Dragon Hybrid's aura without any sweat breaking. Riser turned and his wings erupted into existence, burning in the air. Riaz took several steps away from her husband as she looked at her servant. "Fire, that's all you have," Issei said before his own wings appeared, massive sapphire color blue dragon wings that had to be a wingspan of 20 feet at least. Surzich Lucifer knew that this was not a good thing, he had lived long enough to know when a dragon's pride was insulted and quickly intervened. "Issei Haidu, Riser Phoenix," he started, making the two look at him. "Okay, that was a good start. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe I know what is going on and intend to help rectify it. Riser Phoenix, you have made a very powerful deity angry. A dragon's pride is the worst thing to insult, as it can lead to untold horrors. Greg, here, can correct me if I'm wrong, but you have not only insulted the dragon, but the host and the name of Gremory itself in doing so. Now, I propose a one-on-one duel between yourself and Issei to put this to rest. But the type of duel will be decided by the host of the dragon." Surzich finished, Riser paled slightly at hearing it. Issei was grinning viscously as his eyes flashed. "The dragon duel, his insults will only be paid in full by his death. If I win, my pride will be satisfied and my king will not have another marriage contract ever again. If Riser wins, the Chromatics will hunt him for eternity for killing one of their own." Issei answered easily, making the crowd murmur in shock. For those of you who didn't understand, a dragon duel is a fight to the death. I should know this as my opposite, Albion, and I are in an ever-raging dragon duel. Dragons know that insulting could lead to this duel and avoid it at all costs, as they could kill of a family branch as a result. Drake explained, making clear that he agreed with Issei about the dragon duel. Riser smirked, "Bring it, pawn of Gremory." Issei snarled in response before they vanished, appearing in the pocket dimension for their fight. Riser was grinning, Issei hissed before taking a knee and his skin split in half. The people watching felt sick before Issei was covered in phoenix fire, only for a roar to be heard. "Issei, your body will not last if you complete the transformation. You will not survive it if you continue." Requiem said in worry. Issei shook his head. "No, I will not turn back and make a fool of myself. I've had enough of being the weakest. If you haven't forgotten, both of our prides are on the line here, and Riser was asking for his death with that last insult. We do this together or we die trying. You with me, Requiem?" Requiem let loose a hearty belly laugh as he answered, "You have spirit, Issei. Now, let's show them the true form of a chromatic blue dragon." Riser was laughing, the pest was burning in his fire. That was until the fire was put out and smoke obscured something, then that disappeared as well. Standing before him was a 78-foot-tall blue dragon, with a wingspan of 230 feet, and it was glaring at him with lava-red orbs for eyes. "That's all you've got, son of Phoenix. Weak, let me show you true power." The dragon spoke, his voice sounded like James Earl Jones, only deeper. Greg let out a choking sound, worrying Asia before he said, "That's Requiem, the blue chromatic dragon." Surzich could feel the power from the dragon, even through the shields that held the pocket dimension together. And with Drake's hyperventilation at the dragon's appearance, it was not a good sign. Issei took to the air as he charged his new body's breath weapon. Riser roared and threw fire at him with no effect. Opening his mouth, a line of lightning surged forth and struck the arrogant devil head-on, and the thunderclap afterward was so loud that it nearly made several of the partygoers deaf. Riser fell to the earth, his body was unable to heal itself and was going haywire, vital body systems were shutting down, and there was nothing here anyone could do. Issei landed by the twitching body of Riser, watching as his life left eyes. The boy's immortality was nothing compared to a true phoenix's own, as they could resurrect on their burning day. Riser and his family didn't have that ability, only the tears and healing factor. Issei was about to end the boy's suffering when a girl stopped him, her hands out as an attempt to protect her brother. "Haven't you done enough already?" Lowering his head to look Ravel Phoenix in the eye, Issei said, "I was going to end his suffering, you and your family need not suffer for his faults. Step aside or I will regret my actions because of your stubbornness, young woman." Ravel was stunned, unable to move an inch. Issei sighed and picked her up in his hand. She didn't resist, instead hiding her face as Issei blasted the late son of Lord Phoenix to ash in a flash of lightning. The dimension started breaking up. Issei took to the air and flew back to the Phoenix castle, carrying the crying form of Ravel Phoenix in his hand. Riaz was silent, she was happy to be free of her marriage contract, but what had happened had changed her view on Ice. He wasn't a devil anymore. She could sense the evil pieces in his body, but that was all the devil magic she could sense. He was a dragon now and was very powerful. She could question Drake about it or talk to her pawn, she couldn't decide. Issei landed and placed a sleeping Ravel into the arms of Riser's queen, who took her away quickly. Surzich walked out and had to crane his neck to see Issei's head. The Lucifer of the devil people shuddered slightly as his aura felt the dragons, and he knew that the devils had no chance against him. "But you not flare your aura at me, I'm very tired from transforming and would like some time to sleep with the fight," Issei grunted wearily as he lowered himself into a sleeping position. Surzich backed off with a bowed head. "Of course, but could I teleport you to the Gremory Gardens so you could sleep in peace?" he asked. The lad, Issei, nodded before Surzich moved the dragon boy via magic circle to the Gremory Gardens in a flash of red light. Riaz looked at her queen who nodded and moved away to collect the rest of the peerage so they could go to Gremory Manor. The she-devil of Gremory walked up to her brother and asked, "Is Ice okay?" Surzich could only shrug. Issei is fine, but he was correct in saying that he was tired. "Before he caught me, I felt his power and it was drained drastically to the point of having a friendly conversation with death. He's lucky to only get that far, any further, and he would have surely have died." Drake spoke from behind them. Asia had silently approached them in worry about her first friend. "What happened was close enough to Juggernaut Drive that I can say that he was lucky. Juggernaut Drive can kill someone that isn't ready to handle it. I would know because one of my previous partners got overconfident in his abilities that he entered it headfirst and was killed because of it." Issei however was changing into a dragon completely, and that should have killed him, but he just pulled the impossible off with only the need to sleep it off as a result. Drake finished his explanation with an impressed tone. Issei woke up the next day without having to be rudely awoken by that alarm clock. Issei made a mental note to have that clock removed as the first thing from his room. Requiem nodded, agreed with that, having seen the memories and hated the clock because it was very loud and vulgar in its language. Lifting his head, Issei looked around the garden that Surzich had sent him to. The smells were interesting and exotic. His investigation of the garden stopped when the smell of pure innocence permeated the air. The large head turned smiled toothily at Asia. "Morning, Asia," he rumbled as he placed his head on the grass so he could see his ex-nun friend better. "What brings you to my humble rented residence?" She giggled. Drake snorted at the poor humor. She smiled as she answered, "You, silly, who else would I want to see?" "I don't know," Issei said as he counted off Riaz, Kaneko, Kiba or Akeno for instance. "They saw me this morning and I wanted to check on you, you are my first friend and I don't want to lose you." Asia started tearing up and pressed herself against Issei's head as though he would vanish at any moment. "I won't be leaving soon, Asia. If I did then I would have Requiem, you, Drake and everybody else drag me back from death's hands. Though I can't promise to not get hurt anytime soon or you wouldn't be able to heal me with your powers and I couldn't let that happen." Issei said, and it comforted Asia as she stopped crying and lay against his scales as the sun started warming them up. They would be interrupted by a flustered Riaz only several hours later. "Ice, Asia, I hate to ruin the moment, but I just got word that 2 exorcists were coming and we have to head back to talk with them." Asia stiffened slightly. Issei and Drake could feel her position change at the mention of exorcists. Issei already knew Asia's story. Drake found out by looking through her memories and was outraged by it. "We'll be ready," Riaz, Issei said, his tone showing that he would protect Asia from the church representatives with his life. Chapter 3. Unlike what people thought, Issei wasn't able to change into human form so easily. The transformation had taxed his body to the very limit and beyond, meaning that he was stuck in dragon form for a while. Though, it meant he was able to have a private space set up behind the orc to rest and slowly change back. Asia visited every day and kept him company, Drake being a pest as usual. Then the day came that the exorcists came, making things change. Issei had been sleeping when the peerage came into the backyard, waking him up from their presences. Then he felt the newcomers, making Requiem wake up as well. The two looked over the white-cloaked figures before Issei tasted the air, eyes narrowing as he studied one of the figures. I can't be unless I was mistaken in her gender all those years ago. He muttered, looking at the other in disgust. Her scent was of tainted metal and bigotry, never a good combination if this involved something so important. Issei turned his head to look at Rias before stepping into a more open area behind the peerage. The dragon, the bigoted one, gasped, looking up at Issei in shock. Yes, Rias said flatly, one of the older dragons, so behave yourselves. The girl snorted, we have already told you the terms, you will abide by them or be cut down. Issei growled, not liking her at all. The two turned to leave before the first stopped and said something in Latin that made Asia go rigid. Issei didn't know what was said, but got the idea when the girl drew her blade, a holy sword. Issei brought his front claw down on the girl, growling darkly as he let the girl feel the full weight of a very dangerous dragon. Don't you ever try to touch Asia again, you bigoted brat. You have no right in Gremory business, and you certainly don't have any right to be on this mission if I was in charge. You are full of yourself, have a holier-than-thou attitude, and are bigoted towards anything the church deems a threat. In fact, I should kill you by ancient dragon law, but I won't. In fact, I'll let Rias decide your fate since you're in her domain. Issei looked at Rias and the red-headed devil sighed, clearly not used to having to decide for a dragon what he should do. But, as she was the king, she had to take responsibility. We will find the swords, as you have made yourselves enemies in the eyes of my pawn, who is Requiem, the blue dragon. You both will inform your superiors that I will not tolerate any more infractions on my lands or my rights to my lands. If the church leaders disagree, I'll have Requiem see if he can talk with some of the angels of heaven to fix this mess. Rias told them, making the two look at her in shock. Tiba nodded, looking pleased with this decision. The rest of the peerage agreed after they thought it over. Issei smirked before lifting his clawed appendage off of the exorcist. I would leave now if you still want a good train back to the airport and back to England. Issei said as he returned to his lazy position, looking like an overgrown cat. The two quickly left, allowing the group to get their homework out. Issei did his with a little help from both Kaneko and Asia, for the writing and maybe a page turn here and there. It didn't take long for the church to respond to this, of course, it was an outrage. Rias was facing a very angry front, but in all seriousness, Surzich was on her side as he had been given a memory of the incident. With Issei and Requiem following ancient dragon law, they had been given a lot of leeway in dealing with all the factions, as Requiem was the most powerful of the ancient dragons. Still didn't help that Tannen, Surzich's newest pawn, had fangirled over the two a while back when they were summoned to speak on this. Still, Issei simply told them that if the holy swords were in the area, he would have sensed them cause of how they tasted in the air. Which lead to the peerage finding the stolen artifacts and handing them over to Surzich's so he could give them to Michael himself. This was a safeguard in case the church was going to try anything underhanded, like with the witch hunts and Inquisition. Issei did meet Gabriel and Michael when the swords were handed over, however. Which was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for the host of Requiem, though he got something out of it. Free access into heaven to train with the Seraph, thanks to being more dragon than devil now. Though, Issei had given his doubts to Surzich's and Grafia on this afterwards. Don't be so nervous about it, the Redeed leader of the devils smiled, you got nothing to worry about. Yes, I do, I am still part devil. I am weak to anything holy related, meaning I will be weakened in heaven. He said. Grafia patted Issei's scaled muzzle, you are more dragon, making the weakness less noticeable. But, you seem to also be worried about your friends and the peerage. I am, cause if I go, they will not have me to face any problem that may arise. Issei sighed. Also, I can't really shift out of dragon form, I've been trying and I just can't. Well, this may be a good time to get help, Surzich answered, giving the massive blue dragon a soft smile. The angels would probably have something on this up there, and if they don't, they may be able to find something to help you return to human form. Believe me, if you're still worried, I'll make sure that everyone is safe while you're up there figuring this out. Issei sighed, looking at them before nodding, let me tell Rias first. Of course, Issei. Surzich's nodded. Chapter 4. Issei was still feeling the sting of the slap Rias gave him across the snout when he appeared in heaven. It was easily seen as a hand shape that made his blue scales turn a darker shade of blue. Looking around, the heavens looked like white expanses of land with the most perfect sunrise sunset in the background. He was lost in the beauty before he was brought out of his revelry by Gabriel and Michael. Greetings, Michael smiled, welcome to heaven. Issei Haidu. Thanks, I guess. He said, rubbing his snout as it flared up in pain, stupid devil weakness. Gabriel walked up and placed her hand on the area before the pain vanished. Issei's eyes went wide in shock. The female seraph pulled her hand away before smiling. There, that should help you, Issei. She said before Michael spoke up. Issei, maybe it would be best if we took you to the area designated to train you. He said, opening his wings. Issei's eyes narrowed to block out the glow of the 12 wings, then had to put a hand to his eyes to make it so he didn't get blinded by the seraph's wings. They dimmed the glow before motioning him to follow, which he did. The three soared across heaven, but Issei noticed that something wasn't right, he could smell something that didn't belong in this place. The smell only got stronger, and he finally was able to tell what it was. It smelled of storms, earth, fruits and fire. He stopped mid-air, looking around before he looked to the right. 4 massive creatures were being held down by massive chains, legions of armored angels were trying to hold the beasts down, but it looked like it wasn't doing anything but making the chained animals more infuriated. He flew over and landed, making a few angels jump in surprise as he looked at the monsters. If Issei hadn't seen it for himself, he would have laughed at the absurdity of it. Sure, his mother had shown him Tokyo's most famous kaiju franchise in the past, but this was taking the cake. He didn't hear Michael or Gabriel land beside him until Gabriel spoke up. "You shouldn't have seen this, Issei," she whispered, looking a bit distraught. "Why? You have captured 4 movie monsters and held them in heaven." He looked at the 2 seraph, confused. "Wouldn't that be a good thing? Means you saved the lives of billions." Michael sighed. "I wish that was true." "What do you mean?" Issei asked, his confusion growing. "These 4," Michael waved his hands at the 4 humongous beasts, "are representations, not unlike the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Each one holds a power that we can barely contain even now. Balance, peace, rampage, death." Gabriel pointed at each one in turn. "They may look like 4 very popular monsters on Earth, but they are not them." "I got that, Godzilla is giving you a death glare," Issei said, as the beast that Gabriel had named Balance glared burning hatred at the seraph. Gabriel shuddered as Michael took a step back. Issei only walked forward and put a hand on the muzzle of Balance. The great beast stopped looking at the seraph and focused on Issei. He could tell Requiem was awake now, looking through Issei's eyes at the beast. It stayed that way for an eternity before Balance growled softly, relaxing. The angels went quiet, the other beasts stopped struggling and looked at Issei. "How?" One of the angels gasped. "We haven't been able to stop them for eons, and now he is able to stop them." Issei ignored the angels, looking at the chains before looking back at Balance. "If I free you, what would you do?" Balance looked at him before a deep guttural voice filled his head. "Teach you and help you." Issei nodded before removing his hand from the beast's muzzle, turning to the chains. His horn sparked and glowed before he opened his mouth, unleashing a bolt of lightning into the chain. The chain shot the lightning back into Issei, who screamed in pain, flying back into the ground. He slowly got up, body smoking from the rebounding attack, growling darkly as he limped over to the chain. The angels tried to stop him, but he knocked them back. Using his jaws, Issei gripped the chain and started to pull with everything he had. The chain refused to budge, only making Issei angrier at the stubborn object. Biting down harder, Issei thrashed against the chain until it slowly started giving way. The heat inside his mouth slowly melting the chain until it snapped, leaving a piece inside Issei's mouth. He spat it out, gagging on the melting metal. Balance slowly tugged at the chain before it broke, allowing the titan to stand up. The chain fell off his body, the golden glow vanishing as the connection was broken. The towering behemoth looked down at Issei before kneeling, pressing his snout lightly into Issei's body. Issei looked at the beast in shock as it did this. Friend Balance growled in his head before turning to his fellow beasts, freeing them. Issei looked at the angels, many gave him looks of annoyance. Michael looked thoughtful and Gabriel, she walked over and put a hand on his snout. "What did Balance say?" she asked calmly. "Friend," he answered, choking a bit from a little metal still in his throat, "he would also teach and help me with what I don't know." Gabriel frowned a little, before looking up at the slowly rising titans. Issei looked at the 4, all looking like Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan and Ghidorah, but they were more real, if Issei guessed. The 4 looked at Issei before they glowed and turned into 4 colored stones. Blue, red, gold and white, all floating over in front of Issei before he screamed, his body feeling like it was tearing itself from the inside out. On the outside, the angels watched as Issei's body glowed pure white, turning into armor before Issei was back in human form. The 4 stones forced themselves into his chest, glowing brighter as the boy screamed even louder. The white outline of his body exploded outward, sending the angels crashing back. Michael was the first up, running over to Gabriel, helping her up. He then noticed Issei's body, smoking and sparking with electricity. On his chest was the 4 stones, embedded into the flesh. Each glowed in time with his breathing, the boy was anything but fine. He was still devil, and being human in heaven was not a good place for that. He quickly picked up the pawn's body and flew towards where Issei would be safest from the holy power of heaven. Chapter 5. Elsewhere, Asia Argento was busy trying to understand and get used to her new predicament. As of now, she was in her balance breaker for her twilight boosted gear, hovering in the air with a Keno. The queen of Ria's peerage was glad that Ria's had gotten the peerage some time away from school to help Asia with her sacred gear fusion problem. The 2 devils were focusing on Asia's flying skills as of right now, as Ria's watched from below. While she was worried for her Issei's safety, Riaz was also worried about what could happen to Asia now as well. She had been going over the footage of the raiding game multiple times, still getting more questions than answers from it. All she knew is that the boosted gear couldn't stay with Issei, so had gone to Asia upon Issei saying her name. What really confused her was why the sacred gears fused in the first place. I was going to say the same thing, you know. A voice said from behind her, making Riaz jump like a startled cat. She spun, to find the leader of the Grigori standing there, with a smile on his face. "Ah, Miss Grimory, it's an honor," Azazel bowed before rising again. "However, you had the same question I guess I do. If it's about why the sacred gears fused, then yes." Azazel rubbed his chin before looking up at Asia. "I may have a theory." "Which is?" Riaz asked, a little impatient. Miss Argento was praying to be more useful in the situation that you found yourselves in, stuck between a rock and a hard place, Azazel started, looking back at Riaz. When the boosted gear started infusing itself with her soul, her current sacred gear reacted to the much more powerful Longinus. "I believe, and believe me, this is the theory here and it's sort of a long shot, her sacred gear force fused itself with the boosted gear so that it could become more useful to its wielder." Riaz frowned, going over it in her mind. "So, you're saying that Twilight healing force fused itself because of Asia's will and wished to be more useful?" "Indeed," Azazel grinned at the redeed. "I'll make a Sasser gear enthusiast yet." Yes, through interrupting her will a certain way, the two sacred gears fused into one whole, becoming a completely new gear on its own. Twilight boosted gear is for all intents and purposes is like having Phoenix Tear's healing effects turned up to 11. Asia will never be permanently injured and will pack a powerful punch of both healing and strength into her allies. But it comes with a consequence, I'm afraid. Riaz looked at the fallen angel, her eyes narrowing, which is. The White Dragon Emperor, Albion will be looking for her now. The only one that I can reasonably say that can defend Miss Argento is Issei Haidu. Riaz, Asia is never going to be a close quarters combatant, she is more long-range support. Riaz felt her spirit wilt at that, she knew that was the exact truth. Asia was way too innocent and caring to ever do close quarters, best case would be in self-defense, but Azazel was correct. Asia would long-ranged and support, nothing more. Sighing, she looked at the ground before the fallen angel put a hand on her shoulder. "Hey, chin up," Azazel said, "all is not lost, if you allow me to train her until Issei returns, you'll have a bishop that can give and take damage while being the best healer. If anything, I'm one of your best chances here." Riaz looked up at her queen and bishop before deciding right there and then what to do. "Do it, Azazel, I want Asia to have the best chance," she answered quietly. Asia wasn't sure the first week of training under Azazel was working until he began feeling the fatigue and exhaustion kick in. She whimpered a bit as she sat gingerly on the couch as Akeno rubbed some ointment across her aching shoulders. One thing she was told to do is have Drake dampen the healing effects until the end of the day so her body would grow stronger. She wished she had objected the moment Riaz suggested it, it hurt. "It's okay, Asia, after it settles, your muscles will begin to feel better," Akeno said gently. Asia nodded as Kaneko sat next to her. The rook lifted up a plate of sweets, silently asking if Asia wanted one, which she took and ate. "Thank you," she smiled at the little girl before wincing as she moved her shoulders a bit too much. Azazel walked in with Riaz before sighing, "I may have gone overboard today, but you now have some long-range defenses, Miss Argento." Asia nodded her head towards the Grigori leader before focusing on her sweet treat that Kaneko gave her. Riaz walked over and sat on Asia's other side, hugging the former nun with one arm around her waist. "You did very well today, Asia," Riaz smiled. "I'm very proud that you pushed yourself, but you earned your respite, no more training for now, but I expect you to be ready for more later, okay? I don't want your Issei to grow weak on me, alright? You understood, Riaz-senpai?" Asia nodded with a look of determination. "I for one am very pleased with my new partner's progress," Drake spoke up, proud could be heard in his voice. "While she may be one of the few female partners I've had, I'm very proud that, while not a warrior like most expect the Red Dragon Emperor to be, she is her own variation of this. In fact, I dare say, she is the first partner that I've given a title." "The title? Why is that, Drake?" Asia asked shyly, still not used to the dragon's rough voice yet or appearance when they had met for the first time in her dreams. "You have earned this title, Asia Argento," Drake said. "As of this moment, I, Drake, bestow the title of Crimson Healer Empress. May this title forever show future generations that they need not be mindless combatants." Asia blushed before smiling. "Hi. Both of us, Drake. Let's show the world that the Crimson Healer Empress isn't just a pushover." Everyone else smiled, they were glad that Asia had accepted the new title, but that meant many things would be different now. "I admire your courage, Asia Argento. Indeed, let us show those who wish to harm others won't be tolerated." The Red Dragon Emperor laughed as Asia smiled, looking up at her friends and Azazel. The newly titled Crimson Healer Empress was going to face the world, but she would face it with her friends. That was for certain. And for Issei, too. Chapter 6. When Issei woke up, he found himself next to one of the, if not the most beautiful, woman. He tried picturing some other woman that would fit but came up with nothing. Her orange-white hair reached down to her mid-back, stunningly brilliant blue eyes, full lips, a body that rivaled Akeno, Ria's, and even Riser's queen, Yubaluna. She was wearing what looked like to be some native islander clothing, made of some pure white substance he didn't recognize. The top part that covered her bust was clearly made to show off a lot of skin, the lower half was like some skirt but was cut at an angle from her right ankle to her hip. This was really making his mind go into overload, but he forced his perverted nature down enough to not knock himself out with a bloody nose. He had been the recipient of one and it had hurt a lot. While he was busy doing this, the woman looked over at him, studying him. Hi. He finally got out, rubbing his head. Hello Issei Haidu, the woman said, her voice was musical and seductive, I am glad to see that you are finally awake. He blushed a bit, not sure what to do, but it seemed she did know what to do. Within a few heartbeats, Issei found his waist being straddled by the stunning beauty, making things even harder on his mental state. She only smiled, using a finger to lift his head to look directly into her eyes. Such a perverse nature, she whispered kindly, making Issei very confused, maybe we have something in common. Huh? He got out, like any red-blooded male with a goddess on his lap would say. She only smiled before leaning in, her breath tickling his ear, I am so going to enjoy teaching you, Issei. His brain finally restarted, making him wonder what she meant by that comment. The beauty leaned back, her chest in full view of Issei as she slowly stood up. Issei groaned as his body reacted exactly as it should, blast it all. The woman giggled before pulling the teenager to his feet. We have much to talk about. She said before leading him away from where they had been. Issei was startled as he looked around, finding himself in a green-hilled area that looked almost paradisiacal. Maybe he had died and really gone to heaven. No wait, he had been in heaven, but where was this place? This is where the four beasts of power reside, Ice, the woman said, looking at him, may I call you Ice? That's sure, he blushed, finding it hard to not have a voluntary reaction. She chuckled, if you're a good boy, I'll give you a treat afterwards, okay? He nodded furiously, making the beauty smile warmly. His gaze was taken off her when the ground shook, his eyes fell upon balance. The titanic beast was lumbering along the fields, shaking the ground with each step. While both Death and Rampage were in the air, soaring to their heart's content. Issei looked at the flying beasts with some trepidation, you don't see a living lava pteranodon and a golden three-headed dragon of such massive sizes every day. Ice, the woman regained his attention, I am Peace, you may call me Mesura Mothra, up to you. He didn't answer, letting her speak. His head was busy trying to sort out everything now, since he had been getting a very good view of one of the beast's body. But it seemed that he wasn't going to be killed, the woman smiled as she put a hand on his chest. Ice, well you are powerful with Requiem inside your body, you are not properly prepared for any sort of combat physically. Mesura said softly, making Issei frown. What do you mean? He asked, wanting to know more. What I mean, she started to explain, is that you are not at your physical potential. You are an up-close fighter or a brawler-style combatant. However, you do know any sort of fighting styles or moves besides just swinging your fists into your enemy's face. That is why I will be one of your trainers, Ice, cause I want you to have the best chance at surviving in this world. Issei felt his brain melt but understood what she was getting at, he was untrained. He needed help, he knew it. When do I start, sensei? He asked quietly, bowing his head. Mesura lifted his head up with her finger, looking at him with those piercing blue eyes. He felt as his very soul was turning into ice from that look. She blinked and the feeling went away, making Issei let go of a breath he hadn't realized he had been holding. It begins the moment you let me out of the gem that is embedded in your chest. She said firmly, letting her hand fall. What? Looking down at his chest, Issei yelped as he saw 4 glowing stones. Don't fret, Ice, Mesura's voice calmed the hyperventilating host of Requiem, her hands finding his shoulders, you are perfectly safe, don't worry. But, he blustered, they are in my chest. How can I not worry? Simple, cause they are there so you can summon us when you need a trainer. She answered with a loving smile. Issei gulped and calmed down, not really understanding this at all. But he would roll with it for now. He still had a lot of questions, but he wasn't sure where to start now. He then fell to his knees, groaning as his head started hurting. Mesura was at his side, rubbing his forehead gently. It's time for you to awaken, remember, Ice, the goddess-like beauty told him, pull out the white stone and toss it at the ground. Issei barely nodded before his vision turned to black and he felt himself falling into the nothingness. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching, if you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day, bye.